I'm not a doctor, but I am a MD. MD? I said, yeah, I'm a mule dealer. My name is Sam Robertson. I'm 97 years old, born and raised here. Well, Clayton was just a little crossroads town, what, 700, 800, 900 people, maybe 1,000. No pavement at all, not even in here like there is now in this old barn. I can remember, I must have been 5 or 6 years old, and they were having a 4th of July parade down Main Street, such as it was. Well, there wasn't nothing but dirt and dust up there on Main Street. So I walked right up to the corner here, just a block, and stood up there as a young kid and watched the parade come by. The band, the great big band, I must have had 4 or 5 in it, big to me at the time. We've become, to me, almost like a metropolis, from a little crossroads town to a metropolis. And I suppose other places have been the same way, but that's my version of Clayton. Went to school in the Depression, the Great Depression. Clayton couldn't afford but 11 grades at that time. So I graduated here in Clayton High School in 1934. My mama wanted me to get a further education. She sent me to a little military school up in Virginia, Randolph-Macon Academy at Front Royal, and I graduated again for a 12th grade, so I got 2 high school diplomas. Then I went to Duke. I was there during the time that we had some great football there, coached by a man by the name of Wallace Wade. And I got me a job with Liggett & Myers Tobacco Company in Durham. I got married during that time. It's about 1940 when I got married. I was drafted into the service from Liggett & Myers Tobacco Company. And I wasn't even drafted till 1943. Old Sam was going to be a hotshot pursuit pilot, he thought. There were 3 phases of flight school: primary, basic, and advanced. Well, there was a little place down in Americus, Georgia, little old red clay field down there. But there was a civilian, and he had been, if you know what an old barnstormer was, that's when they flew planes with haywire and everything else kind of made up of. And Mike was very good. And these primary flight trainers that we had down there, well, PT, primary trainer, 17 steermans, open cockpit, 2 cockpits, one for the instructor and one for the pupil. Had no instruments on it except one, a floating compass, which is probably the same thing, it looked like to me it was, as on a Model A Ford, old floating compass. So Mike took 5 of us pupils. He was hired by the government. He said, I'm gonna try to teach you 5 guys to fly. Well, it took us all up. And he wrung us out. I mean, he wrung us out. He wrung me out. And he said, there's a bag up there on the dash. Said, if you get sick. Well, he couldn't make me sick, to my credit. He said, well, I think you're gonna be all right to be trained. And so he gave me the required time. It was, if you didn't, with dual flight training, if you didn't solo by 10 hours, you're washed out of the program. Well, about 8 hours, he says, I think you're ready. He said, go around the field 5 times, try to come down as closest to the field with your wheels as you can, and said, go around 5 times, and then the 5th time, come on back in. Well, the first time around, the plane don't fly like that straight and level. It flies like that. And all you're looking at back in that little old open air cockpit is the blue sky above. I came around the first time and I thought I was on the ground, so I cut my throttle all the way back. I landed 50 feet in the air. That thing came down like a tennis ball, bounced right back up. Boy, I didn't know nothing, so I threw them throttles right wide open. Old Sam greeted them next 5 in, I'm gonna tell you that now. I learned to look over the side to see where the ground was. I didn't do that first. Mike said, what happened to you? I told him, I said, you didn't tell me to look over the side of the plane. I did too. No, you didn't either. We're back hard back. Anyway, he rushed me down to get me another. You know, you got a side vision out here. And you got a little box in a room. They would cross from here to that wall over there, I guess. And you're away from it that far. You got 2 little cords attached to 2 little poles in a small box. And you try to line those 2 cords, you try to line those poles up as even as you can, sitting way back yonder. Well, I did it. And he said, well, what happened to you? I said, I told you. You didn't tell me where the ground was. Look over the side. Did too. On and on and on. But anyway, I finished up the course. Now, we were waiting around to go to basic training to fly what was a company by the name of Vultee. Made an old basic trainer. Now this had a canopy on it, didn't have but 1 wing instead of 2. And we used to call them the Vultee vibrators. I never got there. We waited at Americus, Georgia, to get the basic. As I said, it was getting on toward the latter part of the war. They cut the whole training programs out. We don't need no more pilots. We need gunners. So they sent me all the way out to Kingman, Arizona to go to gunnery school, which I did. Bam, 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 thank you, ma'am. It was fast and furious. If you didn't get it the first time around, you didn't get it. Because they needed gunners to fill up those planes, because they had old Hitler on the run over there. So we never got to fly our first mission until the 15th of March, 1945. 9 fellas in there, in that plane that flew with me. There's 9 of us, all told. We went to a place called Oranienburg, Germany, and they called it marshalling yards over there that we were supposed to bomb. which are railroad yards. We did that. We did it successfully, but we came back with 32 German anti-aircraft flak holes in our plane. Nobody was hit. We flew 18 bombing missions over France, 2 or 3 over France, the rest of them over Germany. We saw planes being shot down on those missions. Sometimes maybe 1 or 2 getting out in a parachute. Sometimes everybody getting out in a parachute. Sometimes nobody getting out in a parachute. And on all our missions, the old plane was shot up kind of bad sometimes. Maybe an engine missing sometimes. That made the pilots have to struggle to get that thing back to Framingham, our base, which they always did, always got us back. Out of all that turmoil, when the war was over, not 1 9 of us had a scratch. Now, what does that tell you? It tells me one thing. The good Lord was looking after us. And you say, well, there were others in similar situations. I don't know the Lord's mind. I just know what I went through. And I do believe that. And then we flew 2 mercy missions. This was after the war was over. Old Hitler was holed up in his bunker down in Berlin, killing himself. And the powers that be over there still, they knew they had lost the war. So they gave us permission to fly foodstuffs, non-perishable, to a starving Dutch people. The Germans had starved them out when they had taken over the control of them. It flooded the dikes, and they were in terrible shape. They had been notified we were coming with this food. And they were on top of buildings when we went over Amsterdam. I don't know, we came in low because our drop zone was about 15 miles out of Amsterdam, where we were supposed to drop the food, and did. We came in real low, people on top of the buildings waving to us. Then we went on out about 15 miles out and came in, I thought a couple of 100 feet off the ground. My pilot says more like 100. We dropped the food, and I was fortunate enough to go on 2 of those missions. And we dropped my plane along with many, 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 many more B-17. Didn't carry no bombs naturally. We carried food and dropped it out to bomb bays. And on the ground, written out, you know that the Dutch people are great flower growers. And I think they were white tulips. Saying thank you boys written out in white tulips on the ground. I think that was one of the most rewarding things we did. Of course, the other had to be done. But it seemed like that made me feel better than anything else that I did. That's our crew right now. They were on top of the plane and everything, on the ground, of course. And there's this plane here. Yeah, that's us right now. and there's another one, and there's in the air a group of us, and up there on top, and different little pictures there. This one here is a captured Ju-88 German bomber. We went to our first reunion in St. Louis, Missouri. There were some 800 of us veterans there. Did you hear me? Recently, this past October, I went to Tucson, where it's always held now. Then it was 15 of us were there. This guy here is him. And then those fellows, that one of us ever made the reunion, that's me. He couldn't make it, sickness. He couldn't make it, sickness. And we didn't know what these two were. That's the waist gunner and the tail gunner.
Show me where you are again.
The runt. Of course, this is representing missions and whatever. And that's a rifle thing. That's Old Heart. And this one here was the air medal that was given to us. And that was our wings right now as a gunner. My mother said, if you come back to Clayton, I'll sell out the business to you and your brother. She had been left the business. My daddy passed away when I was about just 12 years old, I believe, in 1929. Battle Moore Robertson. He built this building in 1914, 100 years ago this past year. Third grade plowboy, grew up on a farm out of Clayton here, about over the other side of Archer Lodge, and he got his reading and writing arithmetic. From there out, he educated himself. Well, into his 20s, he was still flying, looking back into that mule. He decided, I guess, there was something better than that. So to make a long story short, he came to Clayton and joined 4 more fellows. There were 5 of them in all. And they started B.M. Robertson and Company. And after about 5 years, he bought them out. All these pins on the side with the troughs and everything, and the old water trough, that's still back there now, though. Son, you got to first realize that everything in here is old, including me.
Right.
Way over 100 years old, most of it. Some old buggies back there, some old sleighs that I got out of the north later, some old wagons, 2 horse and 1 horse. Some of them are buggy wheels and some of them are wagon wheels. And they were just acquired over the years. The last mules were sold in the early 60s, somewhere in there. The transition was slow, see. People had the mules and they want tractors, so they wanted to trade the mule for a tractor. And they did a whole lot. And we had preparation here in the mule pens to do that. And the old mules were beginning to fade out. And every once in a while, some of these old farmers would show up with a tractor or something they had acquired somewhere. So we knew, being in the mule business, to survive, that we had to do the same thing. So we did that, and made the transaction from horse-drawn to mechanized. and it worked out all right. Well, way back, my daughter had just finished high school, and my wife and I wanted her to go to a small Methodist school. So we took her up to a little place called, a little place at Danville, Virginia called Stratford College. It was a junior college. And old Sam had his best suit on, maybe a white linen suit, and I had all the credentials, you know, and this lady was up there showing us around the school because they wanted to see if they wanted to take us as well as we wanted to take them and my daughter. But the grades were all right to get in, and so just a junior college. And she was showing me and my wife around there, and she kept calling me doctor. After about the third time, I said, well, lady, I'm not a doctor, but I am a MD. MD? I said, yeah, I'm a mule dealer. She didn't forget me.